Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube. So today I am going to show you what I am eating at the minute. So it's going to be a full day of eating. The goal at the minute for me is to get back into training after a pretty long time frame off, to be honest. So if you've kind of looked at my recent videos, you'll know that I had quite an extended period of time basically off training. So I had around 12 weeks off training after I had surgery, and I am on week 6 now of getting back into the gym. The goal for me at the minute is to essentially get back to my standard training, my normal 5-day split, and it's a slow process when you've had time off, but essentially what I'm going to be doing now through the back end of the year is eating to fuel my body, eating to get stronger, and actually giving my body what it needs to build muscle, because after having a prolonged time away from training and you're trying to get back into, full training, full strength, everything like that, the last thing that we want to be doing really is dieting when we're trying to get the body to recover, to get stronger and all those things. So that is essentially the goal through the back end of the year. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you exactly what I'm eating, and I am going to essentially talk through how to eat to build muscle effectively and how to do this properly. First meal today, I've just made this, and we have got 2 bagel thins with egg and bacon. So I've got 3 rashers of bacon, 2 bagel thins and 2 eggs. So that's my first meal. When I got up this morning, I did have my coffee. So I always have my coffee with my 60ml of oat milk in the morning. And I also have a big glass of water with glutamine and creatine. Creatine is a really, really great supplement in terms of helping with short-term energy output. So let's do a little deep dive into creatine. You've essentially got something in your body called ADP, and that binds to something called phosphate to make ATP, which is your body's short-term energy source, if you want to say it that way. So that essentially, taking creatine can help with the ATP production, which can help with short-term energy output, which essentially, if you're going to be able to lift a little bit more over time, that's going to lead to more muscle mass. There's also some things come out recently about it helping with cognitive function as well. So creatine is a really, really great supplement you can take. And then glutamine can help with, it's an amino acid. It can really help with just gut health, digestion in general. So I take those 2 first thing in the morning with my water, have my coffee, walk the dogs, and then sit down and basically eat my first meal now. In terms of what I'm doing at the minute, I am following a meal plan. So I have a training day meal plan and I have a rest day meal plan. So I eat the same food every day. I do have some free calories. So I have 250 free calories where I can essentially have what I fancy around my meals. But I'm going to break this down because I follow a meal plan. It's nice and straightforward. I eat the same sort of 6 meals on all my training days. And personally, I just find it so much easier. So it means that if you are someone wanting to build muscle and you really want to make this as easy and straightforward as possible, then one of the really, really useful things you can do is follow some sort of structure. Because if you are trying to track your food every day, and let's be honest, most women are really, really busy, working, looking after families, cleaning, doing house bits. If you're spending 4 or 5 separate times of your day going into MyFitnessPal and tracking your food and trying to figure out how many calories have I got left, how much protein have I got left, that's time consuming. A, you're going to be way less likely to actually hit your calories, and B, you're just going to be so stressed, right? So something that I do, and I really recommend that you do if you are wanting to really get the most out of building muscle, is set yourself a meal plan structure. You can still rotate food sources round within that structure. So say, for example, you have chicken and rice and veg for your lunch. You could swap that chicken for any lean protein source. So it still allows you to have a bit of flexibility, but you're not having to track your whole day from scratch every single day. So I have 6 meals, I follow that meal plan, and then I basically track in 250 calories a day of what I fancy. It means then I know exactly what I am going to buy from my food shop. I know exactly how much food I need to buy each week. I'm not having to sit and track my food. And also I get to the end of the week and I know that I've hit the right amount of protein, the right amount of calories. I've got enough fats in my diet, which as a female is super important. And I know that I'm actually hitting my goals on a day-to-day basis. And it just makes life so much easier. So that's something I do, and I'm going to break it down and show you exactly how I eat to build muscle. Okay, so I'm just sat down with my pre-workout meal. So just been doing some work this morning and now onto this meal. So meal number 2, which is 50 grams of oats and 25 grams of whey. So we've got cereal, milk whey, and then a banana. So this is my pre-workout. So you will have noticed this, but I basically eat the same 6 meals every single training day. And one of the reasons that I do that is because if I was just tracking my food, if I was just scanning my food as I went through the day, I would get to the end of the day and I would be like, okay, I'm really hungry. I've not had any dinner. I've only hit X amount of protein. And that's when you'll end up with your head basically in the cupboard at 6 o'clock at night, trying to figure out what you can have for your evening meal. So the way that I would really recommend working it out, and it doesn't even mean you need to eat exactly the same meals every single day, but one of the best things you can do is have some form of structure in place. So take me, for example, I eat the same 6 meals every day. So I have the same breakfast, the same pre and post workout, the same lunch, the same evening meal, and the same meal pre-bed. Like, that honestly doesn't really bother me. If I want to rotate a protein source, like if I want to have chicken instead of prawns, or I want to have, some days I'll have 10% beef mince instead of steak. So I will rotate things around a little bit. I'll have, different types of veg, things like that. But it really, really doesn't bother me eating the same things because I know it's easy. And I know that if I was to change my meals every day, being completely honest, I wouldn't hit my calorie goals. And that for me is important, that I'm consistent day to day to get the progress. But if you are someone that wants a bit more variety, what I would really recommend doing is having like a structure, like a go-to structure. So let's break this down and I'll explain how you could actually work this out. So say, for example, you've got your calories. So I'm going to actually pop a little guide below where you can work out your maintenance calories, because if you're watching this and you want to give this a go, have a look in the guide. There's an equation and it will work out essentially maintenance calories for you. So go and have a look in that. But once you've actually got your calories, okay, and you know how many calories you need to be eating, what you can then do is you can break that down and decide, right, how many meals do you want to eat? So something that I really recommend doing is sticking to the same amount of meals every day at similar times, because having like a go-to structure and having something set in place that you follow, it will really help in terms of regulating your appetite, getting your body in a good routine, and also reducing your decision making. So you're not constantly just thinking, I'm hungry, I'll just scan this in and see what it comes out as when I'm scanning it into my fitness pal. So what you can then do is follow like a set day-to-day structure. So say, for example, you decide, right, okay, I'm going to have 2,000 calories every single day and I'm going to divide that into 5 meals. So what you can then do is decide how many meals you want, and then you can basically set like a calorie and a protein goal for that meal. So that's like the next step in terms of having an example structure and then knowing roughly what times of the day you're going to be eating those meals, and then having a calorie and a protein goal for each meal. And then after that, what I would recommend doing is tracking in a meal that hits that calorie and protein goal. So say, for example, you're having 5 meals a day and you're hitting 2,000 calories. You could then have, right, this is going to be my breakfast for this week. This is going to be my lunch for this week. These are my snacks for my pre and post workout, say, for this week. And this is my evening meal for this week. So then you've got your meals already planned and already tracked ahead of the week, and you're not having to track your food in every single day. So that's kind of the next step. If you want to have better consistency and you want to be able to hit your fat loss or hit your goals for building muscle, is actually pre-deciding your meals in advance of the week, tracking them in so that you know that you're hitting your calories, and then just basically replicating that day. And you could do that if you wanted to. Right, you could do that kind of every day as you go every week, as you go through the week. You could do that every week on a week-to-week basis and essentially have your set meals planned for the week ahead and use those meals. But that's like one of the biggest things I would say if you are struggling with your consistency is stop ad hoc tracking, because you're literally winging it. It's like with anything, right? If you wing it, the results aren't going to be as good as if it's like pre-planned, because it is way more decision making, way more stress. You might not have the food in you want. It's way less likely that you're actually going to hit what you need. So what I would do is either get yourself a meal plan and follow the meal plan, or at least have like a structure with your meals so you know, right, each meal has to be this amount of calories and this many grams of protein. So then you've got like mini goals to work towards, and you know then if you're hitting those calorie and protein goals through the day, you know you're not going to be getting to your evening meal and running out of calories because you've planned out the calories and protein per meal and you've pre-planned those meals for the week. So this is like something I'll do for the girls that maybe don't want to follow an exact meal plan, is I'll give them like 5 or 6 options per meal that all hit their calories, and then they can just rotate around them and maybe pick one lunch for one week, one lunch for the next week. And it honestly makes it so much easier because you're eating at regular times of the day, you're eating, you're just building a much better routine, and your consistency will be so much better. So that's like my biggest tip. And then when it comes to them, say if you're on 2,000 calories and you're having, let's say, make it easy, right? 2,000 calories, 4 meals a day, 500 calories per meal, and I don't know, let's say 40 grams of protein each meal. So that's going to put you at 160 grams of protein, 500 calories, 4 meals a day. You know exactly what you're working towards, and you could have a different 500 calorie breakfast every day if you wanted to, but you know you've got a target to work towards where you know how many meals you're having and you know you're not running out of calories. So that's like the easiest way to do it. And then what you might say is, okay, say if you're in a building phase, you're on 2,000 calories and then your calories go up by 150 a day, you could say, right, I'm going to have those 150 calories on my evening meal, and I'm going to push my evening meal up to 650 calories, for example. So it's a really easy way then to be able to increase your day and make sure you're hitting your targets, or decrease your day if you're in a fat loss phase, and still make sure that you're being consistent without it just being a random ad hoc tracking. So that's like one of my biggest tips, and something that really helped me when it came to being consistent with my nutrition goals, is knowing how many meals I'm eating a day, which meals I'm eating in advance, and the timings of my day. And honestly, that literally changed the game for me in terms of my consistency. So hopefully that helps. But I'm going to eat this and then I'm going to go and train upper body. Okay, I'm back from the gym. I've got my post-workout meal, which is 50 grams of Cocoa Pops with almond milk. And then I've also got a whey shake. So this is just 25 grams of whey, again with almond milk, and have exactly the same post-workout meal. Quick, easy, because normally I'm back, I eat, and then I'm straight back into work again, whether it's like calls, etc. Today I've got a client call I've got a call with a new client, and then I've got a live tonight, and I need to do a bit of other stuff in between. So this is always my post-workout. And something else that I feel like can be really, really tough to get your head around, but if you are someone that is wanting to really get the most out of your building phase, and you're really wanting to build muscle, you're wanting to move away from essentially feeling kind of like fluffy, and you want to get the thing that gets thrown around a lot is, I want to tone up, I want to get more defined, etc. Like, one of the best things you can do is like follow through with a consistent building phase. And I honestly think, as a female, this is the hardest part, because dieting, like, a lot of females have dieted before, or have like grown up with parents that have dieted, whatever. But I honestly think the hardest bit is, as a female, building muscle, because I think it can be really, really tough, especially as a female, more so I think the females than guys, actually seeing the number on the scale come up, feeling yourself maybe gaining a little bit of body fat. Like, mentally, it can be quite challenging. And I wanted to talk through a little bit, because I still have days where I even struggle with it, and these are thoughts that I have when I'm in a building phase at times, but I want to explain like how I navigate it, how I handle it, to make sure I stick with it. Because I think the biggest thing is, in a building phase, is you need to stick with it, right? If you want to build muscle, you have to stay in a consistent surplus. And this is why, like, having some sort of plan or structure, or consistently tracking your calories, if you are tracking your calories, is really, really important. Because if you are flip-flopping between like building and then dieting because you're feeling a bit fluffy, so you go back to dieting after like 6 weeks of building or even less, you're going to really hold yourself back from making progress with building muscle. And because building muscle as a female, right, it takes time. It really does. It takes quite a few months consistently eating in a surplus and training hard to actually build muscle. So if you are spending, say, a month trying to build muscle, and then you start feeling a bit uncomfortable, you start thinking, oh God, I'm feeling a bit full, my clothes are a little bit tight, which are all really common thoughts that come up in a building phase, and then you're thinking, oh, I'll just go back to dieting for a bit. Like, that is literally holding you back. And as a female, if you want that strong, athletic, kind of leaner look, because when, you know, to get a lean look, to get a strong athletic look, like, you have to have the muscle there when you diet down, because if you diet down and you don't have the muscle there, all that's going to happen is you're not going to have the look you want. You're just going to end up looking like skinny and small. And this is essentially where a lot of females maybe diet down and they're like, oh, like, I don't have the look I thought I would because I don't actually have the muscle that I need. Or maybe you don't have as much muscle as you need, because when you have more muscle, you can you'll look leaner when you diet, when there's more muscle there. So the missing piece, I guess, for a lot of women is actually having enough muscle and spending time building muscle, because that's what's gonna make the difference when it comes to your physique. And it's harder because A, it takes more time, and B, I just think it's harder mentally for females to deal with the whole weight gain process. But you just got to think, if you're always flip-flopping between building, dieting, because every time you start to feel a bit uncomfortable, you end up dieting, that is going to hold you back from making progress. So when it comes to building muscle, like, the best thing you can do is actually ride out the building phase. And let's be honest, like, I still have days where I feel uncomfortable. Like, I have days, honestly, when I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh God, I'm looking a bit chunky today, or my clothes are a bit tight, or I just took a form video and my stomach is hanging out the top of my shorts because I've got a few fat rolls when I bend over. Like, I still have that. You know, I have days where I think, oh God, my face is a bit rounder than I like. Like, I've got, you know, that everyone has their own things that they struggle with, but I think it's just, so you have to really take a step back and think, actually, yes, I do want to build this muscle. I need to just ride out this phase, because if you pull back and diet every time you start to experience a little bit of discomfort, you're never going to make the progress that you want with building muscle. And I always think, right, good things grow outside of the comfort zone, and you have to ride it out. And realistically, for a woman, like, you are probably looking a good 6 to 8 months at least in a building phase to make progress of building muscle. And that is also going to come down to spending enough time in a surplus. And this is why, as well, having a structure outside of dieting is so important, because a lot of women will diet, finish the diet, and then, oh great, I'm done, I'll just like chill for a bit and then I'll go back to dieting. But actually spending structured time building up your calories, actively pushing your food, making sure that you're eating enough calories and enough protein, and also it's coming from like quality food sources. Like, they're all things that are going to actually help you, A, finish your building phase with your calories nice and high, B, have actually progressed your training, and C, been eating enough consistently to actually build the muscle that you want. So if you genuinely want to build muscle, then you need to spend enough structured time doing all those things and giving your body the time it needs. And that means every day in a surplus, because if you just spend 3 out of 7 days a week in a surplus, and then you don't eat enough for the other days because it's a weekend and you've, you know, ran out of time, so you skip your breakfast, then that is going to hold you back if you're doing that on a regular basis. So honestly, like, this is one of the best things that I ever did, is keep your structure in your building phase and make sure you actually follow through with the building phase. Like, it's hard, it really is. Like, I still struggle with this, honestly. But once you really get into it and you embrace it, you start actually thinking, this is quite fun. Like, I'm getting stronger, my sleep's great, my energy's great, I get to go out for nice meals, like, I'm really enjoying my food. You know, I'm getting really strong in the gym. There's so many positives to being in a building phase. And when you just learn to embrace it and be like, actually, it doesn't really matter if I'm carrying a bit more body fat, like, so what? You really lean into it and you start actually making some really, really good progress. And this is where I honestly made the most progress, when I started committing to a building phase the same as I would a diet, and actually following through with it. And like, now I'm going to be in a building phase from pretty much since I've gone back to training in August through to next year, which is going to be at least half a year in a building phase. And that's going to include me eating in a surplus pretty much every day. So that's like one of the big things when it comes to making progress is, you know, you have to be eating in a consistent surplus daily, making sure that you're actually eating enough calories and you're following a plan, your food structure is good, your quality is good, you've got enough protein in, because that was one of the biggest mistakes that I used to make, was I just lost all my structure when I came away from dieting, and that was something that really, really held me back. So top tip when it comes to actually building the muscle that you want and spending time in a surplus, and how to do a building phase properly. Okay, so meal number 4 of the day. So this is basically chicken and like salad. And I know this looks pretty boring and pretty bodybuilding-y, but again, this is something to like really think about, right? In a building phase, is like your food quality still matters. And it's so easy when your calories come really high or come higher, especially when you come away from dieting and you're in that transition with going from dieting into like your calories being higher. It's really easy to just add loads of really low quality foods into your diet and basically keep your meals the same. And then you end up with like a bit of flapjack, a bit of cookie, a bit of extra this, a bit of extra that. And before you know it, actually you're still pretty hungry because you're not consuming the things you need to be consuming from a health perspective. So something to really think about is like when you are building muscle, even when your calories are high, you still want your food quality to be good. You still want your calories to be coming from like quality food sources. So a really easy tip when you're transitioning away from reverse dieting is to make sure that you basically bulk out your meals. So for example, when I go from dieting to building, like I still have the same number of meals. I still have 6 meals on a training day, regardless of whether I'm dieting or building muscle. All that happens is that in my building phase, my meals are like bulked out a lot. So I'm in that transition period at the minute where I'm sort of entering a building phase, so my calories aren't like super high. So hence why I've still got this meal, which is like chicken and veg. But as I go into my building phase, for example, what will happen is I'll end up with like carbs being added into this meal. So this might become like chicken, rice and veg, or like chicken, pitta and veg, for example. So that's something to think about. And even with like my last meal, that was 50 grams of cereal, that will come up to like 60 grams of cereal, 70 grams of cereal. So it's a really easy thing to think about. Like my first meal this morning, my egg and bacon bagel. When I diet, that is just egg and bacon without the bagels. So then the fundamentals of your meals stay the same, and it's just that your meals get either made smaller or made bigger. The fats and the carbs from the meals, the protein will stay kind of consistent. And that's as well what allows you to actually keep a really good consistent routine and make sure that your digestion also stays good when you go into a building phase, because it's really easy to just fill your diet with a load of little snacky snacks, and before you know it, your food quality's in the bin, your digestion's awful, and you're still pretty hungry because you're basically consuming loads of like heavily processed foods. So yeah, really good tip is when you're dieting, keep your food quality good. When you make that transition from dieting into building, keep your meals the same or keep the meal structure the same, and just basically make your meals bigger. So if you're having pasta in a meal, add more pasta. If you're having, oats for breakfast, can you make your oat portion bigger? So actually bulking out your meals, adding more carbs, adding more fats into your meals, as opposed to just adding loads of random snacks, will keep your food quality good, and it will keep your digestion in like a really, really nice spot as well. So that's just something to think about if you are struggling with the building phase. So anyway, I'm going to eat this meal. This is chicken. This is 130 grams of raw chicken. Obviously, I'm not eating it raw, with some salad and Peronaise, which is the ultimate top tier dressing. So this is my 4th meal of the day. And then I've got a client live, and then after the live, I'm going to have like my final couple of meals. So that is essentially where we're at. Okay, so I'm just about to make my evening meal. So this is technically my dinner, I guess. I've just finished up work for the day. So I'm going to show you what I am making. I've already got my potatoes cooked in the fridge. And then this is essentially what we've got. So see down here, we've got some steaks. So these are like garlic and herb sizzle steaks, and then some veg. So just got a few different types of veg. So I'm just going to cook this, and then yeah, potatoes in the fridge ready to go. Okay, so I actually ended up traveling today. I am staying away in a hotel tonight for work. I've got a client getting on stage, which is super exciting. So I'm actually away at the hotel tonight. So basically, I am just about to eat my last meal. I have just been sat working, and I've actually popped to the shop to get this. So it's slightly different from what I would normally have, but I'll show you what I've got. So normally, for my evening meal, I would have 0% Greek fat yogurt with a little bit of whey stirred in, and then I would have 100 grams of berries and 20 grams of dark chocolate. So it's very, very similar. Sometimes in my off season, I will do this, and I'll just basically change the meal very slightly. So tonight we have got this. So this has basically got the same amount of protein in as my normal Greek yogurt I would have in the evening. So normally I would have Greek yogurt with whey, which is just under 25 grams protein. This is basically a raspberry broccoli pouch. So very similar calories as well. It's got about This has got basically 8 calories more than what my normal Greek yogurt and whey has, so very similar. And this is a really good point actually, is when you're out and about, often people freak out and think, oh my god, I don't have my meal with me. Like, it's so easy nowadays to be able to just pop to a shop and grab something. Like, you can literally get squeezed yogurts, you can buy your chicken pre-cooked, you can buy pita bread, you can buy bagels, you can buy, like, there's so much variety. Pre-made protein shakes. I bought this little berry pack, and it's like a double, it's like blueberries and raspberries in a little pack. And I grabbed some Greek chocolate, so this is just Greek chocolate. Am I all right? Some dark chocolate. This is 70% fat, 70%. I'm not okay. It's been such a long day, guys. 70% dark chocolate. So I'm going to basically have this as my final meal. And that wraps up my full day of eating, essentially. So I will put the full macros down here now so you can see the total calories, the total macros for the day, and this is my training day. So I really, really hope you enjoy this, and I hope you found some useful tips. As always, if you do enjoy them, please do like, subscribe, and I will be back next week with another video.